Hi, I'm Helen Cummins, and this is Mallorca Living, a video podcast dedicated to sharing the stories of inspiring people who have made this beautiful island their home. For each episode, we'll share their story. They'll tell us about their journey, the challenges, the triumphs, the insider tips that make life here so special. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome. I'm here today with Henry and Gaye Bennett, and they're going to tell us the story of their transition to Mallorca from London. And they're also going to tell us a little bit about a family settling into Mallorca, as well as buying a business and commuting back and forth to London. So we're going to get loads of insights into a new life in Mallorca. Thank you so much for being here, Gaye and Henry. So can you tell us a little bit about the idea of what inspired you to leave London and move to Mallorca?
Yeah.
You start?
I'll start. Well, I think we'd been looking at a move for quite a while. It's just that we didn't quite know where that move would be too. So when we first started thinking about it, we were still thinking about somewhere else in London, perhaps, or potentially by the sea in the UK, but kind of still close to London. And we just couldn't really agree on what we wanted, or certainly I couldn't work out what it was that I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. So I think that's kind of how Mallorca came about in the first instance. So we were initially thinking about trying to buy somewhere as a holiday place here and splitting our time between the two. And I think really the permanent move here came when we, I guess, just found the house that we absolutely loved.
Fell in love with.
Yeah.
And what about you, Henry?
I think as most couples, slightly different. For about 5 years, I was pretty set on Mallorca, having come here since I was about 8. So we did look around lots of different places, but I think the appeal of particularly the airport, being able to travel to America, at the time I was travelling to America every 2 weeks, I think, so that was quite appealing. But to be honest, I was always pretty keen on Mallorca for about 5 years.
But you have a history with Mallorca because
true.
you've been coming here since your childhood, right?
Yes, definitely. And obviously it's different from mainland Spain in quite different ways as well.
Yeah.
But I think it was more of a journey for you to agree or...
Yeah, because the option, you lived quite central London, right?
Yes.
That was one of the motivations. Your family was growing up and you wanted to have a bit more space, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you live as well in central London, it's quite difficult to live anywhere but central if you want to stay in London, because the thought of travelling 30 minutes to get back to where we used to live to go to work would be a pretty depressing day-to-day life. Yeah. But generally we wanted to slow down a bit, have a better life for the children, which I think it has delivered for certain.
So how are the children settling in? Because you have 3 children, Coco, Juno and Frank, and they're more or less teenagers, and it's a massive transition for them to a new country.
Yeah, it
new
is.
Language, new everything. How are they doing?
They're actually doing really well, and it's sort of surpassed our expectations in terms of how well they settle, because we were a bit worried, but equally we kind of thought they're kids and they can adapt and they're good at adapting and it will be a lot of fun. Yeah. So we kind of didn't think that they wouldn't, but it happened a lot faster than we imagined, which is amazing.
So I remember you applying to the academy. So that was the school that you decided on, and you made the application. And I think having 3 children was maybe an advantage in the end.
So we actually moved without a school though.
Oh, did you?
So we didn't have the school place till afterwards. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Well, we had some places, but not all places. So they couldn't accommodate all of them. So it was a bit, and we had to keep letting the places go as we had delays and so on with actually trying to buy the place.
But I think though, generally it's quite funny because when you talk to your friends or family about doing this sort of move, everyone will say to you, it's a bad time to do it. Insert, they've just made new friends at junior school. They're just starting GCSE. There's always a reason not to move your children. But actually, like having done it, and maybe our kids, maybe are different, maybe not, but actually out of all of this, that's been the easiest bit. I mean, the kids have very much slipped into, in their eyes, a better life. In fact, at Christmas, none of them were that keen to come back to England.
Really?
So I think it's pretty quick. And I think if people were looking to move here or anywhere else, I think I think one of our advice would be that whatever you think the problem with the children will be, it's probably going to be less than you think it is, from our experience anyway.
And what about the language? Learning the language, learning Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's taught in English. So actually our youngest, because he plays sports, actually speaks the best Spanish. Because a lot of people did say to us that not just the academy, but all international schools here, that actually if they don't play sport, they probably will not be fluent because their friends will likely speak English. And actually I think that probably is a pretty true statement, actually. So my advice would be get your kids into sport.
Yeah, and I think, like, Frank is the youngest, he's 10.
Yeah.
So I really think the younger your children move to Mallorca, the better chance they have of speaking, because they're like a sponge when they're really young, and it seems to be so easy for them. Tell me, I was looking back today on when was our first Zoom call, and I found our follow-up email, and it was the 18th of January 2022. So I remember that call, with you, and you were on Zoom, and I was seeing your house in England and so on, and you explained to us at the time that what you were hoping, what we were dreaming of moving and so on. And then the whole follow-up. So if you think back to 2022, early January, what was going on in your mind? What were you thinking? And now, of course, you see it from a different perspective. But at that moment, how was the dream of Mallorca? What was it?
I think it's a slower life, a very different pace of life. And also partly looking actually to the next stage of our lives, which is obviously planning to at some point not have to work as well. And I suspect a lot of people that move here have one eye on that, particularly if they're similar age to us. But obviously as well, 2022, I can't remember the exact dates, but I guess we were just coming out of COVID, which London was, fair to say, not much fun to be in.
No, but I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of us, right? To change life at that point.
But I think also we just wanted a bit more fun, and we just kind of thought, do we want to be still here in 10 years' time, doing what we're doing now in the same place? And we didn't. So it was kind of, let's try and
are you having more fun here now?
Yes.
Of a lifestyle, yes.
I think it feels almost inconceivable that we didn't do this. I don't think it's possible for us to think that we would have just stayed in London, because we probably would have stayed in the same house. But I think always difficult thing, isn't it, is that one thing wanting to do it, and actually second thing is actually doing it, and that's pretty wide because obviously we've got a lot of friends as well who are like, I love the theory of it, but I think that the actual practicality is possibly not for everyone, I think it's fair to say.
But that's true, because we see it on the Zoom calls. We have many Zoom calls with people, and they all have the same aspirations.
Of course.
But I think you were so courageous with your decision. It was kind of, you were doing it, and I think once you found that dream property, that was it for you. You were hooked, and it was going to happen, right? So can you talk us through, because you looked at many houses actually, and you even set your heart, I think, on a house more towards the north of the island. Yes. And then when you came back for second viewing, you realized, no, actually that's not the one. Yeah. And in that visit, I think you found what was your dream. And it probably wasn't what you set out looking for, right?
No, I don't think it was. I mean, when we came here on holiday a lot with our kids, we generally went to the north of the island, up around sort of Poyensa and that kind of area. And we thought we wanted to live around there, didn't we? And we did look at a few properties with you around there, and they were great. But I think the more we found out, the more we realised that actually it's not super practical for us sort of going forwards. And it's not super practical with the kids. And and I think being introduced to new areas really helped, didn't it? Yeah,
I think what we knew at the start and what we know now, even now, if someone was to kind of say to us in a similar position to us, where should you live, we would be pretty set on, like, if you want to go to particular school that we're at, there's like a triangle between where we are, Santa Maria, to Bini Salem, Ala Road. That's like the place to do that. All those places we didn't know at all.
You didn't know it.
We didn't know any of them.
It became very important to you, and I think your proximity to Palma was and to the airport, right?
Yeah.
For both living, schools, also the holiday rental business that we have, but also most importantly of all, which we had no idea actually when we put an offer in the house, is a train line. Because if you've got teenagers and anyone looking to do this, if you have teenagers, your child will be in Palma 3-4 nights a week, and all of them, a big gang of them, all come back on the last train and then get a bus. And to be honest, had we moved somewhere that was not in that train line, I think that would cause us a pretty substantial problem. Yeah. And so that would definitely be, particularly if kids are in that age of starting to go out after school, that train line is
I've
quite
heard
key.
that from many people, that being close, within a 5-10 minute walk or drive to the airport. And even for yourselves, if it gives you that option that you can go into Palma, and in summertime when the car parks are all jammers and everything, Palma is collapsing, you can just take the train and go in.
It's massive. I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty certain, having come here I didn't even know there was a train line, because as a tourist, there's no reason why you would particularly do that.
Agree.
But I mean, obviously we're slightly biased because we've ended up there, but that triangle is definitely a very practical and beautiful place to live. You can access the mountains, the beach, the schools, Palma, all with relative ease, which is not true in all parts of the island, obviously.
Yeah. So being close to, you said Santa Maria.
So it's kind of like, so you've got Portel, Santa Maria to Bini Salem, Alaro, that sort of, that triangle.
And the school that your children attend is quite close, right?
Yeah, it's in Marrachi, yes, it's not.
Yeah.
And it's what, 10 minutes drive from your house?
It's about 15 probably.
Yeah.
But we are mixed between, we've got 2 kids in the senior school and 1 in the junior school, so you do
two drops.
Senior drop first and then go back on yourself and drop.
Right.
We often say that the price of paradise is driving.
Driving,
basically.
right.
Spend a lot of time driving the kids around.
Yeah, but this is normal at their age, right?
Yeah,
There is a period, because I finished that beginning of this year, my daughter finished school, and I was yes, finally, no school run.
Well,
and
I believe 15-year-olds can drive those mini cars.
Oh, can they?
Which looks pretty.
You're tempted to, maybe.
No,
we're not.
definitely not.
Definitely
No chance.
No, not yet. So, what was it about your house that made you fall in love with Finca Hermosa? What was it that captured your heart?
Well, I think I came and saw it first. And in fact, even before we saw the house, we were looking at, I was showing our kids the houses that I was going to see with Lucy when she showed us around. And my daughter said, oh, I really like that one in particular. And the photos were not great. So, but I think I'd already looked at quite a lot of properties before we got there and discounted most of them for one reason or another. But there, I think the second I walked through the door, I just had a good feeling about it. It just felt right. And I felt like every corner I went around, I just liked it more.
Yeah. It's a spectacular property, I have to say. I mean, I fell in love with it when I went to see it. I thought it's a dream, and it's not. I think it's something that's very difficult to find. You might dream of having something like that, because it could be kind of a Mexican hacienda, no?
Which
in
it is,
Tulum.
Yeah.
Or it could be a very traditional Spanish, but it just has something very, very special because of this courtyard area.
Yeah, I mean, it is a unique property in Mallorca, and I think obviously we did different reasons, but Gaye saw it first and loved it. It was probably more expensive than we wanted to. We actually wanted to buy a house for. But the primary sort of goal throughout this was to buy a house with a business, and it's quite hard to find places here on the islands where you can live in a property, host weddings, host big groups,
and retreats. You do a lot of yoga retreats.
Yes.
Art retreats, writing retreats. It's amazing.
Exactly, and also as well, we were quite lucky as well, because the previous owners had brought their children up in it, which is primarily why we wanted to move there, obviously. But then what happened is the daughters then took it over and basically modernised the house. In fact, did a very good job on that. So actually, we sort of bought a house which was the right crosshair for us. That is quite unusual. It's not too modern, but it's also not brown everywhere. As we know, when you look around houses, often in rustic houses, quite often they're sort of, very
Lots of
brown, dark,
wood.
where this is very light, it's got a lot of windows. But the house itself is a pretty extraordinary place. And actually, in our village, everyone knows that house. Apparently used to have, the whole village used to come up for parties there, allegedly.
Oh, it's beautiful.
nice
It really
place.
is. And it has 3 separate houses on
Yeah.
the estate. So how does it run with when you have a retreat, for example? Do they take over the main house?
So they're all it's all sectioned off. So basically, like the courtyard area and the main house and all the gardens is the guests, and then we have like an L-shaped sort of lateral living 3-bed house effectively, and our teenage daughters have another 3-bedroom house. So actually, they don't even move back in now. We've lost our teenage daughters; they have their own house.
Oh wow!
They just
On
never
the
move.
property,
So it
and
is
they
a bit
show up
annoying.
for food or what? Yeah.
So it is a little bit
Come in
annoying.
to eat and get clothes.
So we've bought a big house that we primarily live in, but it's only me, Gay, and Frank now because the other 2 they just don't come in the house anymore,
Right.
which is a little bit frustrating.
Because you want to have them all there.
Yeah.
Wow. And is it an all year round business or is it just summertime?
Yeah, definitely all year. We've been quite surprised. So we got
Yeah.
numerous bookings in December. We've had bookings in January. We've had a couple in March, a retreat in March, fully booked in April. I mean, we could probably rent a house every week of the year if we actually wanted to do that.
Wow.
But more the focus that we're trying to do is have more, probably less bookings with more revenue, with slightly different guest profile, and also probably weddings and retreats, as opposed to just booking it generally. Because interestingly, a lot of our guests are American and Asian. That's typically
American and Asian. Wow.
yeah, which is
okay.
interesting. I
And
think
how do they find you then?
so. The previous owners, as I mentioned before, in case I listen, they did a very good job. So the
Marketing the property.
the house has been in like the New York Times, as Vogue. Where else? It's been if you Google it, it's been everywhere.
So it's been featured.
Yeah, quite a
Wow.
lot.
So we have a lot of people who approach us directly saying we want to stay here, as opposed to, which is obviously pretty helpful.
That's great.
a
That's really
business.
great. Did you have to pay a premium for that because there was a holiday license, a business?
Yeah.
How did that work actually?
Obviously, have we paid a premium or not? I actually don't know, but I suspect the negotiation was difficult in one sense because when you get to October, you probably got hundreds of thousands of euros of bookings the following year. So there's obviously an enterprise value and a residential value. We never actually discussed whether that was split. In fact, we did at the start actually whether we could split the 2 negotiations, but probably yes would be the answer. But it wasn't as clear because there'll be different tax implications if it was split, I presume. So
Yeah. So basically, you bought a home with this holiday rental license, and actually it already had a very strong reputation, and therefore you really could start a run. Like you just took it over, and it was running, right?
yes, correct.
So you had income from day one.
Yes,
Yeah.
much needed income.
Much needed
Much needed
income.
income with all the maintenance. Yeah, I mean, when you buy a house like that, so typically what happens is the bookings get transferred over to us. So we had probably, I don't know, maybe 15 bookings that were 15 weeks of bookings that were transferred over. Of which, yes, anyone looking to do this with a holiday rental license, that is quite key because when you start from scratch, obviously it takes a while for the Airbnb or whichever platform you're going to use algorithms to catch up. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's not hard to rent places here on holiday rentals because there is just not enough of them at all.
And there's no more because you can't get a license now anyway.
Correct.
So it's literally what is available is available.
Yeah.
They say more or less it's a 20% premium you pay on a property, on the price of a property that has an existing license.
I guess that expands the potential buyers, right? Because that means potentially a holiday rental owner or someone living there will have to say our house is not for someone that doesn't want to live there, it's fair to say, because it's just too much to.
I mean, we bought it because we really wanted it to be our home and we wanted to bring our kids up there. But then it's also that sort of opportunity to run it as a business as well. And I think if your brain works that way, which thankfully Henry's does,
Sometimes.
mine less so. And I think your background in vacation rental area anywhere, so I didn't say that very well. His background in the vacation rental business side of things anyway is super helpful.
But I mean, here particularly running a holiday rental business is a good business. There is no getting away from that. Because we've noticed as well, which I never knew, so people that booked all over December, they were coming because they wanted to come for Christmas in Palma, which I'd never really considered that would be a destination for a Christmas a Christmas break. And I was looking at all the nationalities of people that have booked. I mean, it is amazing. We've had everywhere from Russia to China to America, South America, Colombia, like literally it's pretty much everywhere other than Europe, pretty much.
Other than Europe, which
well, we
is
have a few,
great,
but broadly, if someone books from Europe, I'm surprised, which is quite interesting as a change in the island generally, I would imagine.
So now you're going to start doing weddings as well as the retreats. So this is where somebody rents the property from you and then they do all the catering and the organization themselves, right? Or they hire somebody to do that.
So we've sort of established relationships, some of which you've introduced us to actually, for catering, hiring all the equipment, etc. And then we've just opened or just built a, with planning permission, just point out, like a mini bodega at the back of the property. So we've done deals with 4 or 5 of the local wineries.
Wow, that's
so it is very set up for weddings. There's like a sort of bodega area, roof terrace area, big area with we've got our first wedding booked. But we're getting probably 1 or 2 inquiries a week for weddings, probably. Wow. I would have thought.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So this is a whole new area of development that you're doing. Can we talk a little bit about the whole process of buying the property? Because I do remember observing all of the emails going back and forth with Lucy and yourselves, and it took more or less a year, right, to buy the property.
I think it took a bit more actually.
I think it was
more than a year.
Yeah.
And even, I think Lucy went on maternity leave and came back. We were hoping to have the deal done and actually
but I think
it did take a lot.
The downside of buying a property with a holiday rental license is you cannot buy it between April and October.
Right.
Because obviously the guests are in the property. So that obviously partly didn't help as well, which everyone should be aware of, that obviously there's a window to buy those type of properties out of season effectively.
Right.
So
talk me through the issues. You agreed with the owner, you and the owners, the previous owners got on very well, you made a good deal. So then you started, I think, to sell your own property in London, organize maybe the financing side. What were the issues that you came across?
Well, the main issue that we had, of which anyone who's listening to this, I would strongly advise, is sell your main home first before trying to do this. So that's an easy bit of advice to do, but is a pretty big leap of faith, obviously, to do that. But there's no question in my mind that had we done that, we would have shortened it by a third, probably.
Right.
Because one, and you can correct me with this, I think you have to put down, is it 20%?
10% at the option
at the start.
contract.
So obviously you need cash flow,
liquidity
to do that. We're in the UK, you don't do that. So that obviously causes a problem. We were lucky enough that wasn't necessarily the issue. But I think also, like, I think it's pretty much a full-time job to try and do this. If you're moving a family, selling a house, buying a house, particularly with holiday rental license, assessing the business, back and forth, it is almost a full-time job for a period, for certain. Yeah. And obviously, if people have full-time jobs, don't have the flexibility around your own business, that is a blocker. There's because this isn't something you can kind of just do in the background.
I would agree with that, because I think, because I am employed full-time pretty much, well, I have 1 day off a week, but had Henry not been able to be a little bit more flexible, but also the fact that I think you just lived and breathed it, so you probably got up incredibly early and got onto things, and you were still doing it late at night, weren't you, to fit around your business and work as well.
But it's a commitment. As we said, is that the dream that everyone has, the practicality. I mean, it's, and we obviously used your service, which is incredibly helpful. If you didn't do that, obviously then there's another layer on top of that as well, because obviously without all the introductions.
Because I remember Lucy was constantly chasing everybody involved, from the bank to the lawyer to the. It was like a big process to get everything.
Huge.
And then the second big issue, of which you obviously are very familiar with, is if you want to buy a house that's not in an urbanisation, the house will at least partly illegal, in inverted commas, although it's not illegal, but it is. And that, for someone who's coming from particularly England, where actually there's a lot of problems in England, but actually property definition of legality is actually quite, I actually look back on it and think, actually they've got that pretty much straight. Yeah. Whereas here, you know, there's all sorts of different like habitation license that kind of make. But
you have about 5 different licenses on a property, and you may have 4 that are perfect, and then one it's not all the paperwork clear or registered or whatever. So it's very complex, the property legal system here, and people underestimate that because they assume Spain is the same as the north of Europe, and actually it's not.
But I also
it feels
think
quite muddy though as well, doesn't it? And I think the advice you get from one area might not be the same as the advice you get from somewhere else.
But I actually think it's a process though, because I think when you first start, you look at a house and go, well, I'm not buying a house that's illegal. By the end of it, you're like, I just want that house. Because actually, you know, the more you get into it, you realise that actually outside of an urbanisation, it is likely that no house has everything tied up in a bow.
No, but even they say that if you change the tiles outside, you're actually meant to get an obra menor. Who does that? Or even if you paint your house, you're supposed to get an obra menor if you follow the letter of the law.
And I think that's why, and I think I would imagine that does put off some buyers, because I do think that if you first find a dream house and you find these things out and go, well, buying in England is crazy. It's but then obviously if you keep going, you then sort of realise, well, actually, every house is pretty, well, obviously not if you're an urbanisation or a town, but so that stalled it a lot as well. But the main thing is, will the bank mortgage against it? Because the bank obviously will have a good risk profile against this. But that definitely stalled things, because we had to psychologically get over the fact that parting with what is a significant sum of money, you know, that also took a little bit, didn't it? To be
definitely.
fair.
So for somebody new coming to the island, facing similar issues, what would you say to them now in hindsight?
I would say that you need to talk to some people that have purchased properties in Mallorca, particularly if it's a rustic land property or fincas, because everyone's been through the same process, us who've done this, and everyone now, if I'm honest, we don't really even think about it. But at the time, it was the only thing you'd think about. And again, that's just part
How vulnerable are you in the legal system?
Exactly.
And you're coming as a foreigner. When you don't speak the language, you don't know the laws. There's so many potential problems. And I have to say, on top of that, is to have a really good lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a recommended list of lawyers. And we only have that because we have experience, first-hand experience of these particular lawyers. I'm sure there's many more that are fantastic, but it's really important to have good legal advice. Yeah. And in a way, practical, because some can just give you the whole negative, and say, oh, I've done my job now, I've told you all the downside, but the practicality is something else, because if you want to buy the business, you buy the property, you want to make it work. So there's somewhere a balance, right, between the two.
But it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. I think that's what we've concluded. I think a lot of our friends probably would be quite keen for the life that we now have, but I probably wouldn't be keen for the life we had for the 2 years to get here. But you have to do one for the other. Well, maybe not 2 years, but, you know, and...
well, I think it was from kind of 2022. When did you move in?
So we moved in May 24. So it's not, I mean...
so you had about 18 months of... Yeah. And I think once you made the decision, you start to become very... because that's no longer your base and you're looking to move, but you're in this transition phase, which is... It's a horrible phase to be in.
And we also faced as well the joy of Liz Truss's budget in the middle, which completely threw, I don't know if you remember, but it completely threw out the housing market, like never seen before, but a significant movement in the interest rate. So that was all thrown into
the mix
as well, and particularly that massive effect if you have a house in prime central London, probably more than anywhere in some degrees. So that didn't.
So having somebody here as one point of contact and having somebody on the ground that speaks the language and knows the people, how helpful was that in the whole transition for you? Would you say?
Super helpful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it would have been significantly harder.
So it was hard already, but it would have even been worse.
Well, I don't think it would have happened, to be honest. I mean, also as well, the other thing to note is a lot of houses are listed with up to 5 estate agencies. So I think when we had the meeting, we signed. I actually think there was like 3 or. I mean, the whole thing on your own, I think would be and Lucy, who helps us. Actually, we live in the same village now. In fact, we meet up with Lucy. We're friends with Lucy. So actually, you know, all in all,
Yeah.
But I would say, I think that there's the whole practical side of things. But I think there's, maybe this is my female side, not side. Maybe this is me, but I feel like there was an emotional support there as well. So for someone like me, I am more emotional. I'm less practical in looking at the aspects of moving, and I found that sort of the general advice and support in terms of just being somebody to run thoughts by and to talk about different areas and what the vibe is in certain places, what the feel is, what it's like to live here, what people are like, how you integrate into communities and so on. I found that advice in that aspect was
some insights into
it was really, really important, and even putting us in touch with people to get their views and thoughts as well.
But also as well, I think the estate agent is not necessarily incentivised for you to buy a house that's right for your lifestyle. They're only incentivised to sell the house.
That's right.
So in fact, almost to a degree, if you don't like it, you've got to resell it. That's actually quite good for them anyway, right? Yeah. So having someone that actually is going to look holistically at how does your life work? Because we didn't know, we touched on it earlier, we generally did not know train lines, school, if the kids were at a school, for example, Queen's, the other side of Palma, how difficult that would be for us. So we weren't even, to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about that really, because the other bit was so hard anyway. So I think that's probably for me where the main benefit is not just thinking, how can I sell this house the most amount of money, but finding a house where actually not selling it for the most amount of money, because actually you're working on probably our side as much as the estate agent side.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we do, is we negotiate the best deal. And I think, to be fair, when you think about the initial asking price for your property, and through really hard negotiations, you got, you got it quite I mean, for the property you got with the license and the business, you did extremely well.
Do you know what? Actually, and I agree with that. And we've had a look, as I'm sure everyone does that lives in this island, anywhere we go on the island, we have a look. And I agree with that. I do think we got a pretty good deal. Amazing deal. Yeah. And I think hopefully, fingers crossed, it will prove to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, but you're already growing the business, so it's really interesting. Gaye, I want to talk to you about your commuting, because you still have your job, you've maintained your job back in London. So tell us, what do you do actually? What is your profession?
Yeah, so I'm an exec producer in an agency in London. So I make films and animations for business and sort of corporate brands, so on. So I was lucky enough that I could keep my job there whilst working here, because they've got a really good flexible working policy. So I agreed a renewed contract with them so that I could be here and work from here, but also go to London once a month for sort of 3 to 4 to 5 days to be in the office, so I'm around my colleagues in person, and also to go back if there are shoots or big meetings that I need to come back for. And so far it's worked quite well.
How do you feel, when you're leaving the family and going to London? Or is it a few days vacation, or is it like...
It's funny, because Henry always says to me, because I'll say, I don't want to go, I don't want to leave you all, I feel really bad. And Henry always goes, listen, you've got a few days without school runs, without having to cook dinners for the kids, and see friends in the UK as well. And I always feel like that. And when I get there, I can't lie, it is quite nice to be there.
To still have one foot
I've still got one foot in there. I've got to say though, I don't miss it at all. Right. So when I go back, it's nice to be back. And it's nice to see people. It's good to be in the office and to connect with people and have meetings in real life. But I don't have any part of me that wishes I was still there.
Wow, that's such an incredible
and I'm
thing
surprised,
to be able to say. Huh?
Yeah, because I felt like I might find to be a bit wistful going back, but I'm just not.
Yeah, because I have to say, London, Portugal, it's a massive difference.
It is.
Portugal is a beautiful village, but it really is a little bit.
But even Palma, is very different.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only been back, 3 or 4 times since we moved.
Right.
I mean, my desire to be in London is quite low actually now.
Really low.
Wow. But I think it's amazing how, I mean, we and Gaye have talked about this a lot, how you can actually change your life in quite a big way actually. Yeah. But actually, a lot of it's still the same. Like, in a way of like, obviously the lifestyle is different, but I mean, you've still got the same problems with the kids. You've still got other work, you know. Although it's big, it's not actually as big. If you see what I mean. It's not like we're living on a desert island. I mean, like you know. Palmer's a pretty working.
Yeah, but you're the one actually more hands-on running the business side of it. So that was all new for you, or?
So my business is in that same industry for technology for that industry. So I had a pretty good base knowledge. Although I'm not sure anything can prepare you to run a quite a big vacation rental in Mallorca in the height of August with lots of
everything that's going
with everything that's going on with lots of excitable Americans coming to party in Alice. So it's been interesting. But I think as a general rule, running a business like that, it's just all of it is process and customer service.
But I think you love the fact, anytime I visited you, you love the fact that you have your kind of bare feet or your shorts and your t-shirt, and you seem very, very content in your own.
I think we all absolutely love it. And I think that if the kids were here as well, I think that they would they would agree. I mean, it's the best decision we've made, no doubt. So now it's just trying to make it work going forwards. Because like any business, there's always challenges.
Yeah, but I mean, that will take time. I think because you've taken over something that was running, you're going to put your stamp on it, and you're going to probably bring your technology to it. And as you have more contacts as well, people will take over some of the responsibility that maybe you're doing at the moment.
I think that's what one of our challenges though at the moment is, that because you can't really rent that house without someone present because it's just too much, is actually we want to find someone to actually be there in August so we can go on a family holiday effectively.
Yeah.
Although we were saying, weren't we, that we're not sure we'll ever go on a beach holiday, because obviously we used to go for 2 weeks, but now we're like, actually there's a lot of other places we'd now rather go as a family, because obviously we can go to the beach at any time.
And do you? In summertime, do you go to the beach now here?
Well, I do. The kids weren't here until September.
Yeah, so we finished off, we rented in London so they could finish off school and our work. So we actually didn't, I didn't come with the kids until late August.
So 2025 will be your first summer in Mallorca as a family.
And right now with it raining, we're all looking forward to that.
Well, it's hard. You know, we need this weather. I always say to people, when people say, but it's raining, I say, we need this because otherwise we're going to have water issues in July and August. So I always I'm thankful for the rain. Because
I said that to one of my guests recently. It turned out it was raining. It didn't seem quite on board with me.
Come back in August. You'll be happy.
Anytime.
We will have water for the garden. Your shower.
Before we came and before we bought the house, we hadn't actually been to Mallorca out of season.
No, agreed.
You hadn't?
No, we hadn't. No.
And what's your impression of Mallorca out of season?
I think it's lovely.
It is. I mean, for me, October is the best. It's the best month.
I came out initially in November to look at properties because I thought it's important to come and spend a bit of time and see things at a point when it's not sort of the rosy glow of summer, and to sort of see what the atmosphere is like here and how Palma feels in winter.
Although it's fair to say, if you buy a finca, you do need to be aware of the winter moisture that comes in. I mean, it's funny. Someone told us quite early on moving here is that they're like, if you live in Spain, close your windows during the summer, but definitely open them in winter. Of which we were like, that's a strange
bit. And then
bit.
you were thinking, no,
very true. Very true.
Because of the humidity and so on.
And I think that is something obviously that, I mean, it's not a massive problem, but it's definitely something, particularly if you're not living in a modern house, is something that you do need to prepare for, basically. So we'll set the house up slightly differently for next winter, it's fair to say.
Yeah. And what about the kids using the pool, and they love to enjoy the Mediterranean lifestyle, no?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we were a little bit concerned about is it's a good thing, but the lifestyle here for kids is amazing. There is our oldest
security and safety.
Security, but also our teenage daughter, like pretty much every weekend, someone in their parents' house has got some ridiculous house. They party. Like, her lifestyle is amazing. I mean, it is. They're not they're not hanging out in parks. They're on the beach, which is an amazing lifestyle. But our biggest concern is, will they ever leave? Like, will they actually go to university? Because it's going to be difficult to live in this lifestyle and then say, right,
That's so true. Well, I can tell you, my daughter just left in September.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times she's come back.
Well, this is what
from Paris. Yeah. I mean, every opportunity.
We've heard this. Like, I remember where I grew up, I couldn't wait to go to university and
get away from your parents.
And what we're a bit worried about now is actually maybe it might be the reverse. That, like,
It's true.
No, I think kids that grow up here in Mallorca, they have this impression that they look for a similar lifestyle in other places.
I agree.
And they can't find it, and then somehow they end up moving back here later. I mean, I'm very much, for my daughter who grew up here for all her life, it was important that she leave the island, and she needs to discover new things and have a bigger lifestyle than what you have here.
But it'd be interesting. But
if she comes back in the future.
But it'd be interesting if you ever spoke to, I mean, particularly Coco is the oldest. I mean, she would probably give some pretty good insights as well to any families looking to move, because obviously she sort of lived it, but without her choice of moving here as such.
Yeah.
But I'd be pretty surprised if she didn't say that, there's no way she'd want to go back. That would be my surprise.
What about academically in school? Because they're going through the English system, right?
Yeah.
How does it compare to the school that they were in London?
Pros and cons, I think. So the pros are it's a better school because it's smaller classes. Cons are there's not as much diverse choice of subjects. My oldest daughter particularly is very into drama. I mean, unfortunately there is not much of that here. But the school generally is very good, but it's not 100% slam dunk that school is better or that. In the city, Big London School has a lot of benefits because obviously you meet a whole different range of, whereas here, obviously the classes are smaller and better, but the school is good, isn't it? But it isn't 100%. This is in every aspect better.
I would say there's probably less choice as well. Yeah. So because they can only offer certain subjects because they're catering to a lot less pupils.
Yeah.
So I think if we compare to the school they were in, where there were 7 forms of 30 kids per year, to here where there's sort of 20, 25 times 2, then your choices are reduced. So I think it depends what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, there's a lot more choice now than when we came to the island 25 years ago. Because you do have some, you have the Pauline Quirk Academy, and you have Palma College that opened, and they offer a lot more subjects now in 6th form.
I think 6th form is better. I think it's more the rigidness of around the IGCSEs is. But look, I mean, the kids certainly aren't complaining. No. I think it's more just not observation of it isn't. I mean, when our friends always ask this, obviously, because they're always interested to know, the kids enjoy? I know you're enjoying it, but what do you kids think? I think it isn't that case of just the schools are better because you're paying for an international school. That isn't. It's not quite as simple as that. Switch, I don't think.
I think the level of pastoral care is
of course,
high here.
Yeah, food's better for them. That's fair to say.
And there is that feeling now that I remember we talked before about the kids. You feel that the kids are safer here.
For sure.
And this is a lot of kind of peace of mind for you and the kids around and stuff like that.
I mean, Mallorca generally is quite safe. I think, I mean, obviously, I guess depends where you are, but the kids walk up we live at the top of a big hill. They're happy to walk up there at 10 at night. To be honest, we're not worried about that either, and nor people in the village, more importantly, because if they were, then we would be. So.
How is it living here without speaking the language so far? I know you want to learn the language, but
speak a bit.
We're trying, aren't we? I would not say
Hablas
that
español ahora?
I would say it's not a problem. I mean, I've met quite a few people who've lived here for years and they don't speak any Spanish. Although I've got to say I find that
it's not
something that we want to do. We really do want to integrate, and we've moved into a village that is predominantly a Spanish village. It's not
I think
an expat enclave. So we are trying to learn. And I think one of the things I love here is that people are really helpful with your language. So rather than kind of speak back to you in English or correct you, people will actually take the time to try and help. But I think that's sort of Mallorca all over, isn't it?
But I think if you wanted to do that, it's quite. I mean, there are places here where you probably, like Alaro is very English. Like you go into, but I think where we are particularly, also if you need multiple staff to run your house, I think it's impossible. Like, you know, we have a number of people that help at the house that they don't speak any English, and they're definitely not going to learn English. There's only one option really.
Yeah, you've got to learn
you've got to do it. And also
Spanish.
dealing with anything to do with, you know, your affairs to do with, I mean, it's all of it is, you need some basis. But I think if you do come and live in a different country, you probably should make an effort from our perspective,
Yes,
but that's our view.
So Henry and Gaye, thank you so much for all your insights. But before we finish, how would somebody go about contacting you if they're interested to host their wedding at your beautiful Finca Hermosa, or maybe rent it for an occasion?
So there's two ways, well, three ways primarily, but the main one is our website, which is finca-hermosa.com, which you'll find all the information. The other one is on Instagram, again, just Finca Hermosa Mallorca, or you can book it on Airbnb, but obviously we prefer you book it directly with us.
And I'm sure
obviously.
And obviously you get even more benefits for
Yeah, we offer, anyone who books direct gets free wine tasting on arrival and stuff.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
Yeah.
And communication is easier.
Yes.
When direct,
of course,
obviously.
you're going directly. Do you, and when people are staying, do you interact with them?
Yes.
Is it more that they have this feeling that you're...
I think it depends what people want. Obviously, if they didn't want to interact at all, then you won't know we're there.
In the main though, most guests want, because they're only coming for a week and it might be their first time, they want to fast track, like, okay, so I need to know where do I eat, what's the best beach club, how do I hire a boat? So it's pretty, how do I get a private chef? The questions pretty much are exactly the same questions. There is a level of interaction, but also we help as well, because if there's any problems, we're on site, so we can sort it out pretty quickly.
So you help people to make the most, and
Mostly,
hopefully you recommend ABC Mallorca as a great source of information.
Of course, we take your recommendations. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's difficult because you know as well as I do. You walk around Palma, you can have a pretty bad meal or a very good meal, and sometimes you don't necessarily. You don't know.
I think in general it's pretty good
I think
here,
so.
the standard.
Yeah.
And,
Agree.
but of course there's some hidden gems. So
Absolutely.
if you
Of
know
course.
somebody who can point those out to you, it's fantastic.
Definitely.
Great.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for your
worries.
time and all the insights. It's going to be invaluable to families who are thinking of moving like you did. And I think you made a really courageous move, and I'm so happy that it's all worked out and it's going well. So many
Thank
more
you.
years of
Indeed.
continued joy and success in Mallorca.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Mallorca Living. We hope you found it inspiring and uplifting. If you're planning to relocate to Mallorca and buy a property here on the island, we would love to guide you and support you in your journey. Reach out to us today, book a consultation, and let's start your journey together to move to Mallorca.